Hello, and welcome to Sarah's Baked Goods. Today we're going to be making Hungarian shortbread with strawberry jam. You can use any other jam, it doesn't really matter. I just prefer using strawberry jam. This is a great recipe because for your bakery or for at home, depending on what people like, you can change the jam. So, for a bakery setting, I can have an assortment of Hungarian shortbread, and at home, if everyone likes strawberry, I stick with strawberry. If everyone likes blueberry, I stick with blueberry, etc., etc. So, let's get into it. First, we're going to mix in all our dry ingredients. I like to mix my baking powder, sugar, and salt first, and then add the flour on top. Just a wee bit of baking powder. Always zero off your ingredients. Now the reason why I put everything in first before the flour is it's easier to mix all this together nicely first, which we're going to grab our whisk to make sure that it's nice and mixed, so that it blends in nicely into our flour. The sugar keeps the salt and the baking powder mixed in nicely. Then we'll add in our flour. And again, we're gonna blend that in together. I just like to do it this way because I feel like the baking powder gets blended in better this way, which gets better product in the end. Obviously we need to aerate our flour so that it's nice and fluffy and not dense. There we go. Then we're going to rub in our butter. Now make sure your butter is cold so that it rubs in to become nice and mealy. This was soft butter, so it's okay to use soft butter, but you need to just be very careful. If you mix it too much with soft butter will immediately blend in, and you don't want it to fully blend in. You want to have some chunks here and there. So just be very careful. As you can see, I'm just using my fingers. I'm not using my palms because I don't want to melt the butter any more than it already is. Once your butter is well rubbed in, we're going to add in our eggs to form a dough, which we're going to freeze for 30 minutes. Then we'll start working on our pan to be nice and ready to go. So, as you can see, there's nice big pieces, small pieces, medium pieces. That's the kind of consistency we want. Now this is where you want to clean one hand and get one hand dirty, one hand clean. Okay. Mix up your eggs first. If you're weighing your eggs and your large eggs are just slightly smaller than the amount needed, with small batches you can add that extra bit of water to get the weight. However, when you get into bigger and bigger amounts, just add an extra egg instead of the water. You want the flavor, you want the fat from the yolks to get a better product. So, this is my dirty hand, this is my clean hand. Pour the egg in, make sure you get all that egg in there. Always be cleaning as you go. And then we're just going to mix this in until it's a dough. It is nice if you can keep one hand clean so you always can use your other hand for something else. However, if you're really struggling, don't worry about keeping both hands clean. You can just do the double. I just prefer to keep one hand dirty and one hand clean so that I can turn off the video, edit, I can look at my recipe, and I'm not running around with a bunch of stuff all over my hands. So, if you have to, you can do this as well. But even when you're doing this, if you look, this hand's super dirty, this hand's still very semi-clean. So if I am needing to go to the door or something like that, I can, and it not be a big deal. And this is why I like to keep the hand clean, is now that this is formed into a ball and into a dough, I need to wrap this. And because my hands are dirty, I gotta wash my hands first before I can wrap it, which is just adding an extra step that isn't needed. Nice thing to have, a little bit of bench flour so you can always scrape off extra bits. Because you want all of this to be inside your dough. More waste in your sink, the worse your sink is. More waste in the sink, the less happy your customers are. It's just always better to get as much as possible. Okay, so now that we have our dough, we want to mix this as little as possible once it's formed a dough. So, as I put it on, there's going to be little extra pieces that I can just stick on. And don't worry about it falling apart piece by piece because you're freezing this. It's going to get hard anyways. The other thing is, because you're freezing it, if you want to freeze it quicker, you want to put it flat. And the other reason you want to put this flat is we are going to grate this. That's what makes this a Hungarian shortbread, is we grate it for that amazing texture. So we want to make sure that it's an easy end so we can grate it nicely. Make sure you wrap this nicely. So not only just one way, but we'll wrap it the other way. This is a good recipe because the colder the dough, the better. So freezing it is actually a good thing. Meaning, I can freeze this dough for a month ahead of time, have it ready, and it still be fine a month later. So, for bakery sense, it's really good because it's versatile. Let's say this month I'm making 20 a day, like 20 dozen a day, but then the next month all of a sudden it's only like 1 dozen. I can make all this prep first and then just quickly make the amount of dozen I need depending on the month. So if I'm making that 20 dozen a month, so I'm making like a batch a day basically. Well, if I continue doing that batch a day into the next month, but I'm only making 1 dozen that month, I'm gonna have way extra in the end. However, if I'm getting to a certain point where I have like 10 of these in my freezer and I'm not using them, I can just stop doing the prep, wait till recipes come. As they come, I go down to like 5 of these in the freezer and then I can start up again on the prep. It's very good to have something simple like this that is very versatile like that. Now that our dough has been in the freezer for half an hour, we can start grating it. Now it's still going to be a little bit soft. If you get too soft, just put it back in the freezer for a bit longer. It's okay, don't worry about it, and then come back later. If you have any grated while you're putting the rest back into the freezer, you can just put this into the fridge and it will be just as fine. Half is going to be grated on first, then we're going to put the jam on, and then the last half. So if you're doing a bunch of these in a row, for example if you're doing 4 dozen or so, you're probably going to only be able to do 1 at a time, so only take 1 at a time. Be careful when you're moving the grated bits across, because you're going to warm them up as you touch them, and you might stick them all together, and there's no point in grating it if they're all going to be stuck together into one bit. The grating's going to get you a nice texture. This is like shortbread, so it's going to be dense, but because you're grating it, that's what makes it not fluffy, but not as dense as normal shortbread. Plus you get a little bit of jam to get that extra sweetness. So we're just going to slowly move this to the sides. This is getting really soft. So once I grate this, I'm going to put this into the fridge and put this other half into the freezer. Start my oven. See, it's becoming really hard to use. and then I'll come back a few minutes later to grate the last bit on after the jam's on. So this is way too soft. Put it back here. Level this out. We'll put the jam in now. Doesn't really matter because this won't melt in 2 seconds. When using your jam, just put on big chunks here and there until you get your amount that you want. That's about right. And then just slowly spread it everywhere. Take this out of the way so it's easier to spread. You're slowly going to spread it. Make sure you get it everywhere so that everyone gets a piece of jam. There's nothing worse than ordering an item and then not getting the full item. You wouldn't want to order a mac and cheese and only get the noodles. So make sure you're spreading that jam evenly so that every piece has a good amount of jam so everyone's happy. Now I'm going to just put this back into the fridge while I wait for this other bit to be cold again. Now that we're back, I just put the oven on for 325 and let's grate this last little bit on. Now we're going to put this in for 22 minutes and we'll see how that turns out. But make sure your oven's always on convection so that the fan is on to make sure it heats nicely throughout the whole thing. We'll come back in 20 minutes. 20 minutes is just finished, so we're going to just check it out. It's too white, there's no brown on it yet, so let that go for another 5 minutes and we'll come back then. Okay, another 5 minutes has gone by. Just check this again. Again, there's just a little brown on the ends, so we're going to let this go another 5 minutes. I am practicing this recipe, so that's why I'm figuring it out as I go. Let's check them again. So it's just browning on the top, so literally 5 more minutes. So the total for this recipe will be 35 minutes. And then it will be done. So finally, after 35 minutes, we'll finally take these out. Whew. Looking good. You can see how it's still very white, but there's browning on the top and on the sides, which is exactly what you're looking for. Now we're just going to let this cool, and then we'll cut it, and I'll take a picture of that later. This is how they turned out. The photo doesn't do it too much justice because the jam looks kind of bland, but it has a nice color still. This is a nice size for a bakery, a nice big piece for someone to eat with their coffee or tea. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have my own website. Thank you, and have a nice day.